Hey, everyone. Welcome to Locked On Lakers for Wednesday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. The Lakers kicking off a big 3-game road trip tonight in Dallas. They'll do it without Talen Horton-Tucker, who is now in the health and safety protocols. That news breaks on Tuesday. And plus, Lakers fans, it's a good opportunity to remember other fan bases are struggling too. Other teams are struggling too, including the Mavericks. We'll talk about all of that with Nick Angstadt, host of Locked On Mavericks and the Locked On NBA podcast. All that coming up next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Want to thank everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday. We get this thing up early for you, posts usually around midnight on the West Coast. So no matter where you are, what part of the world you're in, when you're at work, when you take in podcasts, we have this thing ready to go for you 5 days a week. So we really appreciate all the support you guys are giving us. Want to let you know as well that Wednesday's episode of Locked On Lakers is brought to you by Truebill. It's the new app that saves you money by helping you identify and stop paying for subscriptions that you don't want or need, and can even negotiate better deals on those that you want to keep. So, Andy, the big news on Tuesday, which broke actually right as we were starting our conversation with Nick Angstadt, which we'll get to in just a second here, host of Locked On Mavs, host of Locked On NBA. Talen Horton-Tucker is test positive for COVID and enters the health and safety protocols. The Lakers canceled practice and actually grounded their airplane for a little bit to make sure that nobody else was, or delayed their departure, I should say, more than anything. To make
everybody
sure
took a bath and sanitizer.
Just that it was nobody else was traveling with COVID, which, by the way, seems to be going around. Giannis, late Tuesday, we learned that Giannis is entering the protocols. James Harden,
half the NFL.
Yeah, it is 75 positive tests for COVID in the NFL. Adam Schefter reports.
I believe there are now 7 nets in the protocols.
75 today, I should say. 75 on Tuesday.
Yeah, a bunch of the nets are in there, as we discussed earlier in the week. I think like everybody with the Bulls, including like the United Center vendors, or like everybody.
From a basketball standpoint, this obviously sucks for the Lakers because THT, while inconsistent, has become a very important part of the lineup. It gives Frank Vogel a lot of flexibility in terms of how he wants to defend and all that kind of stuff. It's obviously another instance of just the team being unable to gain any kind of continuity. But at least from an analysis, like, we kind of know what it looks like. They did it for the first however many games that he missed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different this time around, just with the idea of they may not have Anthony Davis. It has not been clarified yet whether or not he's going to be available against Dallas. So, it becomes that much more problematic in terms of the team's overall size and length if you don't have Anthony Davis on top of Talen Horton-Tucker. But, the Lakers have had to roll with the punches of lacking continuity since literally training camp. So This is aggravating, but they've seen this movie over and over and over.
Yes. So most of what we talked about really in terms of with Nick isn't really impacted by this. So the conversation holds. And obviously we'll have a lot more analysis and understanding of what's going on after the Lakers play on Wednesday, both about their situation in terms of protocols and anything else, but also the impact of missing THT. We'll also know more about Anthony Davis. But anyway, so great conversation with Nick, and we'll bring that to you now. Got the road trip coming up. The Western Conference is a jumbled mess, as are the Dallas Mavericks. And so to talk about all of those things,
of course,
our friend Nick Angstadt, host of Locked On Mavericks, Locked On NBA, like all the podcasts that you hear around the network, he has his finger in them. Hey, Nick, how are you?
Had to have been a better way to say that, and by a better way, I mean literally
any other way.
Anything.
It's very David Cross from Arrested Development.
Yes, there are dozens of us, literally dozens of us, fingering the Locked On NBA network.
All right, so Andy and I, as we were trying to figure out what we were going to talk about today, Andy had like the best, just sort of basic question: whose team has been, because we want to get into Jason Kidd, who's
Mhm.
still kind of a figure of interest around here, and
Fat
some other
Luka.
stuff. The bad Luka, fat Luka. Whose team has been more disappointing this year, the Mavericks or the Lakers?
Oh man, I sent this out as a poll question for the NBA channel, and I was interested to see which team was more disappointing. And it seems like it goes week to week, right? The Mavericks are a little below 500 recently, and so you put the Mavericks, and then the Lakers are a little above 500, and so the Lakers have been less disappointing, I think, than the Mavericks. Maybe they're just kind of like it, just one upping each other and then one downing each other every week. It seems like, depending on that whole jumble of Western Conference teams. You lose 2 games in a row, all of a sudden you're in 10th place. You win 2 games in a row, you're in like 5th or 4th place sometimes.
I mean, just to illustrate, it's 5.5 games as of Tuesday, but heading into Tuesday's game, separating 4 and 10. If you want to include the Kings in there, the Alvin Gentry led Kings, they're still in the conversation for the play-in game. So it's like, it's a lot. There's a lot going on there in the West, to say the least.
Yeah, it's a really big shuffle. And I'd say, if you want to say which team is more disappointing, you probably just ask which fan base, right? I feel like the Lakers fans would say it's the Lakers. The Mavericks fans would say it's the Mavericks. The reason why the Mavericks have been disappointing is you have largely the same roster they've had over the last 3 years, like the exact same. You've had some injury things. Luka has missed a handful of games. Porzingis has missed a handful of games. Jalen Brunson, Maxi Kleber, really important players for the Mavericks, have all missed handfuls of games here and there, but they've largely been decently healthy, and the offense has just been bad. Like how can this team, who was one of the best offenses over the last forever, they had the best offensive rating in NBA history 2 years ago, come out with a below league average offense this season? I think that's been more disappointing than all the injury stuff and things that we've seen on the Lakers side.
Yeah, I mean, for all the issues the Lakers have, and I think legitimate concerns about where this team's ceiling lies, how high it is, this was going to take a while regardless. The Mavericks should have at least been in a position where they were building off something, but I think also more important, just the idea that you would have a notion of where their direction is. And if the Lakers' direction doesn't look good right now, at least they took a big swing and maybe they missed. The Mavericks were supposed to be actually going somewhere. And that's where I think Mavericks fans, and this could be happy for the Laker fans out there, could have more to feel bad about.
You could say the Mavericks made their own kind of big swing with Jason Kidd, right?
Mm-hmm. That's what I was thinking. Yeah,
that seems to be the Westbrook type move that the Mavericks made, because you had this thing already. Like in both situations, you had this thing already that was working, right? The Lakers line up with a bunch of guys around Anthony Davis and LeBron, and then the Mavericks with their Luka and dudes plus Rick Carlisle, right? And both things were working, to relative degrees. Lakers won a title. Mavericks couldn't get out of the first round, but they almost did, which is something that Mark Cuban hangs his hat on a little bit too much. And they try with Jason Kidd and they say, okay, well, let's change out the coach. Let's change out the coach and bring in a more player-friendly coach, somebody that's going to get along with Luka, maybe take this team to the next level. And so far, offensively at least, it hasn't worked. And there's many reasons why Kidd and the front office, that they blame. But so far, offensively, it has not been working.
I think, for me, I look at it and I think, the Lakers, there's still that. I mean, the relative expectations were different. I mean, I don't think most people thought the Mavericks were going to win a title this year, but I do think they were a very popular, sexy candidate, as people like to say,
the shadow team,
dark
GM.
horse. Yes, the dark horse.
Sexy before Luka put on all that weight.
Right.
Oh, thick is in now.
Don't
I don't know if you know that. The
shame,
90s
Andy.
style of being real skinny is not in anymore.
No,
I'm not saying
we're
Luka
past
should have
that.
been heroin chic, but I mean,
he can still be sexy. He's just not good at running up and down the floor as much. Those are not necessarily related.
As on brand, this is another weird show that we've done.
But I think you look at them now and you say, yeah, I don't. That's not the idea that the Mavericks are going to be like the surprise team that makes the conference finals looks like a real long shot. Whereas the Lakers, I still can look at it and say, yeah, they're not there yet. I'm not delusional. They have a lot of work to do to get to where the Jazz, to get to where the Suns and obviously Golden State are in the conference. But you can still picture them getting there. And I think that to me is the difference between these teams. But it is a reminder. This stuff is really hard. It's really complicated, and it never goes the way it's supposed to go. I mean, even 2020 with the title thing for the Lakers, it's like, wow, that whole thing came together way faster than anybody expected. But you go back and you look at that season, there was, the death of Kobe Bryant. There was, all the coaching upheaval and all that stuff that they had going into the season. I know, by the way, like a 5-month break for a global pandemic and then a bubble play. I was like, nothing about that season was normal or when is expected or easy. And some of those things probably ultimately helped with the Lakers because guys came back in fresh. It was, the bubble was, I think, particularly good for the way the Lakers were composed and the mix of guys that they had. None of this stuff ever works the way it's supposed to, sometimes for a team's benefit and sometimes to their detriment.
Yeah, absolutely. If I'm going to push back on one thing, it's that if the Mavericks start shooting threes, they actually start hitting those threes, then I could start to see a team that could maybe make a little bit of a push and get back to that dark horse, like team that's just rising out of the shadows, because they have not shot the three well, and they're getting decent looks. Like, they're getting wide open threes, and they're 28th in the league in technically open three-point attempts, right? Like open 3-point percentage right now, which is just brutal. If that comes back and that regresses back to normal, then all of a sudden that team can go on a run. Because if you can get hot in the playoffs, then all of a sudden
it's over for you guys.
In a different spot.
Yep, you're wrong. All right, let's talk Jason Kidd. When we come back, and a little more Western Conference, some trade rumors, because the Kidd thing, he was a massive part of the coaching conversation for the Lakers over the last couple of years, and now he is your guys' guy. I'm curious how you think that's going. We'll do that next.
Locked on Lakers brought to you by Stance. They just launched a new line of active apparel. It's perfect timing for the holidays. Stance is the coolest gift you can give. Not the boring old socks, underwear, and apparel you had to pretend to like just to be polite to your relatives. You're going to be stoked to find Stance apparel under the tree. Founded in 2009, Stance apparel represents a radical reinvention of socks, underwear, and active apparel. With a sharp focus on comfort, quality, and creativity, Stance brings an atypical aesthetic alongside some of pop culture's hottest collaborators for the ultimate in style and self-expression. Some of my favorite collaborations include the Wu-Tang Clan, Batman, Star Wars, The Office, Bob Marley, and obviously the NBA. That's what we're all talking about right now, and that is incredible variety. Stance believes the perfect fit matters more than fitting in, that those who feel good do good. See for yourself. Register for an account at stance.com. Get 15% off your first purchase. Use the promo code LOCKEDON at the checkout to apply. Use the color and comfort of a life less ordinary. Enjoy it with Stance.
All right, so again, Lakers fans have complained at length about Frank Vogel and his rotations and all these things this year, with some cause. Avery Bradley's on a bit of an upswing right now, but overall that's been controversial. It does seem like the DeAndre Jordan as a starting center experiment, at least while everybody is healthy, is over. But
you remember that from back in the day, Nick?
Oh my gosh, DeAndre Jordan.
PTSD from that. But
which time?
Right. So it's like, some of those things are defensible that Vogel's done, some less so, whatever. But it's been, he's been on the hot seat for a lot of this season. Coaching has also been a question in Dallas. It's just another one. Like it's the same everywhere. But you talked about the offense in that first segment. Like what has been like the reaction to Kidd? I mean, I saw him yell at you earlier in the season because he wasn't playing Reggie Bullock enough, and you didn't think that was okay. But like, how is that going? Because he was, there are a lot of people in LA who I think wanted him ultimately to be the coach here, before it was just considered untenable and they landed on Vogel.
Yeah, this is how that went earlier.
I have to apologize that you felt that he should have played more.
that was his yelling at me, which was, muted in a Jason Kidd fashion. But I think fans, and at least Dallas fans, are just really split on him. And it's either it's confirmation bias either way. You either came into this Jason Kidd thing and said, no, this guy sucks. I'm going to read the Mirren Fader book chapter, and I'm just going to say, don't make my guys practice on Christmas. Don't make them run on Christmas. All that kind of stuff. Just you're going to take all the stuff from Jason Kidd as a coach, and then a lot of people I think added in the his history and his past, which I know is one of the reasons why he didn't become the Lakers head coach.
I think it is the reason. I think the Lakers wanted to hire him, but they didn't feel like the optics worked. So instead, because they absolutely wanted him on a staff, whoever they ended up hiring to replace Luke Walton, they tried this thing where they were essentially sneaking Jason Kidd in through the back door, as if somehow paying him to be an assistant coach was more morally defensible than making him the head coach. And it, I don't think, really fooled anybody. And it ended up working out just fine. And Frank Vogel won them helped them win a championship. And Jason Kidd, by all accounts, was great.
Yeah, but the thing, if 2019, 2020 had started the way this season has gone for the Lakers, all the chatter about Jason Kidd replacing Frank Vogel by Christmas, absolutely. All the stuff that Stephen A. Smith was saying on First Take and stuff like that at the time would be in play. I'm like, that is the Earth 2 scenario for Vogel and the Lakers is what's happening this year. They got very lucky in the sense that 2 years ago, they got off to a great start after an opening night loss. And then last year, before everything fell apart with the injuries, they were 21-6. So like there was an established, like, we're good if we're healthy kind of thing, but it didn't have to go that way. And I think the Mavericks are a great example of that. On Earth 2, where Jason Kidd gets the Mavs off to a 21-5 start, it's a different deal. Now everybody gets to nitpick, including you, for not playing Reggie Bullock enough.
Well, now he's playing Reggie Bullock. The problem is Reggie Bullock isn't hitting threes
because he listens to your podcast
once every 8 games, something like that. But yeah, and Jason Kidd is not on the hot seat because Mark Cuban is taking all the excuses / reasons / problems that the Mavericks have had offensively. Luka came in out of shape. All the injuries with Luka, the injuries with Porzingis, the injuries with Brunson and Maxi Kleba and all that kind of stuff. The 3-point shooting, like the Mavs just not hitting open shots, taking all those things and saying, well, these are the problems. And then Cuban goes on a little rant on Twitter about how the ball is the reason why the Mavericks aren't shooting the 3-point shot well, because they have statistics on in-game, obviously, but then they also take statistics on, they use this program Noah Basketball to take statistics during practice and open gyms and everything, where guys are just missing open threes in an open gym that they normally wouldn't hit, and so they're blaming the ball on it and all this kind of stuff. All the reasons why Jason Kidd isn't necessarily on the hot seat right now, but those are all the reasons why Jason Kidd is given that this team isn't as good as it could be, or the offense hasn't been as good as it has been in the past.
Wait. Who likes to pick a feud more, in your opinion, Mark Cuban or Jason Kidd? Because both of them are good for it.
Jason Kidd has really tried to, and I think this is an honest attempt by him to squash any of the "I'm a negative person" thing. Here's a drop I use all the time.
This is a positive world.
Jason Kidd saying it's a positive world because it was after a really bad loss, and somebody brought up a player. I think it was Willie Cauley-Stein or Moses Brown that just didn't play a lot or didn't play well, and so he was like, "What do you want me to say? It's a positive world." He was +2 in the game, and like he's really tried to buck that persona of him. So he hasn't taken as many. So it's definitely Cuban right now.
That actually leads well to the next thing I wanted to ask about Kidd, because one of the things that has allowed him to jump the line in terms of going straight from being a player to a head coach without having ever been on a staff before. And, among the reasons the Lakers were so hot on having him be involved, no matter who their head coach was the idea of player relationships and the respect that he garners from everyone around the league. I mean, if you've got LeBron's respect, it's safe to say everybody in the league, his peers, will respect him. What are you seeing on that front, and how do you think that permeates around the team?
That has been something that we haven't seen a ton of, but recently Reggie Bullock came out and said something that really, really caught my attention, because I've been thinking about that too. Okay, Jason Kidd's supposed to be a player's coach. Does it seem like players are being empowered? Kristaps Porzingis, after one game when Luka wasn't playing, said that, we're just out there and we run a pick and roll, and then if we don't hit that, then we're just kind of out there trying to figure out what to do. And I was like, oh, that does not sound like somebody that feels empowered by his coach to run a good offense. But then Reggie Bullock came out and said the other day, after he hit he hit 4 threes in a game. He said, Jason Kidd is a player's coach. He empowers his players. He instills a lot of confidence in his players. And for him to come out and say something like that was kind of eye-opening to me. Say, okay, well, at least Jason Kidd is trying to do that. At least he is attempting to do that. And we've seen guys like Frank Ntilikina come in and have good games. Josh Green come in and have good games after not finding any playing time for Rick Carlisle. Moses Brown has come in and played good games. So it seems like some of these players are getting empowered by Jason Kidd. It just has not worked at the top with Luka Doncic and with Kristaps Porzingis has been as up and down as he's been in the past.
I want to stick with that because it's a great seg into one of the things I'm really curious about, because Luka has been a phenomenon, is just one of the brightest and most interesting and exciting young stars in the NBA. And this has not been a good season, not so much statistically, but like the other stuff that goes around it. I see some parallels here with Anthony Davis that I want to get into a little bit, because these are sort of the foundational stars when you look 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the road, even with the Lakers with LeBron and Westbrook now. Ultimately, this is designed to be Anthony Davis's team. And so I want to have kind of a conversation about those two guys. We'll do it next.
Locked on Lakers, brought to you by Bet Online. Back better than ever. A new web interface for the basketball season. More props, odds, and lines than ever before. Bet Online remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website. Sign up today. Receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code Locked On to receive said bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers for the 2021 season. Bet Online is the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the games start.
Hey, Andy, Locked on Lakers also brought to you by Built Bar. This holiday season, grab the protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, even better than a candy bar. It's a Built Bar. It's filled with so much holiday goodness, rich with decadent flavor, covered in chocolate, but amazingly low in calories, sugar, net carbs, and fat. Those are things you do not need for the holidays. High in protein, though, that is something that you want. So you'll be super yoked heading into the new year. You get the best of both worlds, delicious.
Do your holiday
and healthy.
Shirtless.
That's right, as every holiday should be.
Sexy Santa.
That's
nice.
right. Except for Luka. Keep that shirt on.
Hey,
easy. So many flavors.
And
you have a hard
undershirt.
time choosing. You have raspberry mint brownie, cherry, double chocolate, cookies and cream. People, I'm working here. Built Bar gives you that extra fuel you need to bust down the mall doors and battle all the holiday shoppers. This week it's like it. You don't have much time left to shop before Christmas. Built Bar can give you that extra something to keep you going. Because it's the season of peace and love. Don't bring up your favorite Built Bar flavor at a family party. People are just too passionate about it. Keep the peace. Don't just agree that all of the flavors are good.
It's the new politics.
Right.
Built Bar flavors.
Promo code LOCKED15. Get 15% off your next order. Again, the promo code LOCKED15, 15% off at built.com. Luka is not, I will say this, and then you tell me if I'm wrong. Luka is not playing horribly. It's not like he's been god-awful or something this year. But the overweight thing, 260 pounds that Tim McMahon talked about, and obviously the lack of relative success for the Mavericks has not been a good look. Anthony Davis hasn't, statistically speaking, has been pretty good. He's been fine. But Andy and I talk about this all the time. James Worthy talks about it all the time on the Lakers postgame show on Spectrum. Guys put up numbers, but you don't feel them. And we haven't felt Anthony Davis in the way that he needs to be felt for the Lakers to get where they want to go. So in that sense, it's kind of disappointing. When you look at these two guys, do you see some sort of any kind of parallels in both their importance to the franchise, the way they have performed, and that sort of just relative feeling of, something's missing?
Yeah, you take LeBron James off the Lakers, and then you compare the Lakers with the Mavericks at full strength, and those are pretty similar. I think those are pretty similar teams as far as, okay, this team should be good, but because that main star, that monolithic star, is going to carry them, right? He's supposed to drive everything. Anthony Davis is supposed to be the entire defense, and then when LeBron's out, the entire offense. And then Russell Westbrook can come in there and run some stuff every once in a while. But with the Mavericks, it's Luka runs it all. He runs the show. Everything is built off of what Luka can do, what Luka can provide this team. And yeah, it's hard to look at a guy, a 22-year-old averaging 25, 8, and 8 and say, Okay, well, you suck. Like, you just suck this year, right? But it's the little things. It's exactly what you said about, that James Worthy says you don't feel them. It's in the fourth quarter. What does Luka do? Can he take them on those little runs that the Mavericks need late in games to win games? Can he shoot better than 32% from three? Can he take better shots? Can he shoot better than 70% from the free throw line? It's just little things like that. Can he get by somebody? Is his first step a little bit slow, which it has been this year? And so if he can't get by a player, he can't get into the teeth of the defense and then kick out to an even more wide open shooter, so they're wide open instead of just regular open, and all those things. So it all comes down to Luka's conditioning, Luka's weight coming into the season. Is he getting inspired by Jason Kidd? We're not sure. He only had like a couple of weeks off this offseason. So is he still feeling the fatigue and tiredness of the Olympics and then the playoffs and all that kind of stuff? The the shortened season last year. There's all kinds of different reasons, but yeah, it feels very similar to me.
It's when you think about the future, does I think the confidence of Lakers fans in the skill of Anthony Davis isn't questioned. I think the confidence in Lakers fans of his ability to rise to an occasion, like what it looks like when he is an MVP level guy and what that means, is also, because we saw it in the playoffs, a couple years ago. I do think people worry about whether or not he is a guy who, when LeBron is gone and when Westbrook is gone, and even after he is theoretically paired with another star that the Lakers will inevitably go find, that he's not going to be somebody who can carry a franchise, especially as he starts to get into his 30s. Has any confidence been shaken in Luka? Because these are sort of foundational, and Luka's 5 years younger, I think, than AD, 6 years younger, maybe. So it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but is there any concern at this point that he is somebody that you can build a title team around, can carry them in that way? We had a joke yesterday or earlier this week on Twitter. They posted the splits on the Mavs with Luka on the floor and without, and they've been much better without him on the floor. Does any of that dent where both of these teams, I think, kind of believe they might be going?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not about Luka. What's happened though is that where Luka was just this golden child, perfect, can do no wrong, you're the helicopter parent that will never leave his side. There's been some people now that are finally okay, we can criticize this guy. Okay, maybe it is Luka when Luka's not in, the offense flows a lot better. Okay, why is that? And then trying to figure that out. And you're starting to see people and fans have those type of basketball conversations. There's also okay, well, Luka's got to fix this. He's got to fix the conditioning. He's got to fix the complaining to the refs all the time problem, because it just makes the Mavericks stop in their tracks. And then all of a sudden they don't play transition defense. And then all of a sudden each ensuing possession is affected because of Luka's complaining to the refs. So you're starting to see more critiques of Luka, which, some of them are true. And some of them are just, fans complaining, but we had not seen that in the past from fans complaining about Luka. It was all, well, it's Rick Carlisle's offense's fault. It's Rick Carlisle's, rotation's fault. It's, Kristaps Porzingis' fault. It's Tim Hardaway's fault. It's all that. And now we're seeing fans go, okay, well, it's Luka.
Andy, do you agree with that evaluation that I made of AD? I mean, that's my perception, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. And I actually don't think it's an unreasonable fear from Lakers fans.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's something that I know you and I have, if not talked about during shows, I know we've talked about it offline. Just Anthony Davis is obviously an incredibly talented player. He is one of the most versatile players in the league right now. Is one of the most versatile players we've seen in a long time when you take into account his position and what he's supposed to be doing out there. And, he has been, I think in some ways in a disappointing way this season, he's still, I think, perceived as the number 2 guy on this team. And he certainly was the number 2 guy to LeBron when they won a championship. But as a number 2, I think he has been at his best, better than, say, Pau Gasol was as Kobe's 2. But in terms of, what is expected from him in the future, the Lakers are clearly positioned for either AD to be that guy and come up short, at least it seems right now, or them needing to find somebody better than AD, which I think would alter the plans that they had when they traded for AD in the first place.
That wasn't the idea. Yeah, it was not the idea.
So, what do you do with that? Because no matter where Luka can ultimately take the Mavericks, Luka is closer to what you'd look for in a franchise face, like closer to Kobe and LeBron than AD. Like in terms of what AD has demonstrated, that Brian and I have talked about how Anthony Davis, will have great games, and he's having a really good season, but you don't feel him overwhelmed in games very often. Like you don't see him where it feels like his great games completely change the tenor of what's happening. Luka does that. Luka can take over games, and I don't think this is just a matter of guards versus big men, because there are big men who take over games and just overwhelm.
And as we've noticed, Luka's a big guard.
Big.
But very big.
And some of it is a function of, Anthony Davis. Does he have that overwhelming offensive thing, right? Does he have the one thing on offense? You start to think, okay, who are the guys that you do feel in the NBA on offense? Who are the guys that can take over games? And it's either your ball handlers, right? The Durants, the LeBrons, the Lukas, the Currys, guys like that, or it's the big guys that are the Joel Embiid, who's just a massive human that can plow over anybody and can score around the rim and with touch and footwork and all that kind of stuff. Or it's the Jokic's who have that incredible passing ability where he can just make everything work and fluid and all that kind of stuff. And so it doesn't feel like, to me, Anthony Davis has that one singular thing he can do on his own, right? It seems like it's dependent on a ball handler to set him up. And so that's one of the reasons why I think Anthony Davis is maybe not stepped up to this moment right now, is because he doesn't have that one offensive thing. Obviously, you know what you're getting from him on defense, and when he plays really well on defense, he's a defense in and of himself at times, but it's that offense. And so the Mavs have had a similar, but maybe like a lower level version of this with Porzingis. Can Porzingis become an offense in and of himself when Luka is out of games? And we haven't seen that very often.
Last thing, and we'll let you go here. When it's all said and done, and you look at, sort of the outsider's perspective on the Lakers, where do you think they're going to be?
Oof. I thought that this team would come into the season and just be rolling, thinking last year was an aberration and they would be number 1, number 2 in the West. But right now you start to look at them and you say, okay, well, the health has really held them back. Maybe coaching is holding them back, a lot of people think, but I think this team probably finishes still top 4. I think it's hard for me to envision a full season. I'm thinking optimistically, if we get a healthy, LeBron the rest of the season and all that Memphis and the Clippers both finish ahead of the Lakers and the Mavericks, right? Like it feels like those two teams will hopefully both rise back up and get to that point. It feels like recently the Lakers have kind of gotten it back on track a little bit, and so I think they probably finish 4th. It's hard for me to see them catching Utah. They're just a regular season juggernaut. So the Lakers finish 4. They play either the Clippers or the Mavericks in that first round, and then I think they'll be fine in the playoffs, at least for that first round.
Andy, every time we have somebody on who sort of from the outside who talks about the Lakers, everybody kind of ends up in the same place. And I'm not talking, not necessarily title, because obviously Golden State is looking like a different kind of deal, and at some point Utah theoretically could put it together in the playoffs. Phoenix is obviously hyper legit. That's kind of where I am too, Andy. It's just like I'm not as confident they're going to win a title as I was. I wouldn't put their title odds as high as I did at the beginning of the year. But ultimately, I think at the end of the year, I still have them as like, oh yeah, they're going to be one of those teams that where
you can
I'm
be
not done with that yet.
You can be too close to things when it comes to evaluating them well. Like I remember in 2006, the season that Kobe had 81 and averaged 35. You and I, when we were covering the team for the LA Times doing their Lakers blog, we both wrote our fake MVP columns because we didn't have an actual vote. And I had Kobe second on my ballot. And I look back on it and the rationale I had, and it was very complimentary of Kobe, but ultimately I overthought it. The answer was Kobe. And I think the reason I overthought it, it wasn't even because I was trying to look objective as, the local guy covering the team. I think I was just too close to the flaws that Kobe had that every player has. You don't see as much of them, though, when you get to watch some guys 10 times a year versus Kobe. We watched him 82 times a year.
Right. And not only
LA,
watching,
we had seen
but
years
he
years
dominates every conversation.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that year, the obvious answer, I think, in retrospect, no disrespect to Steve Nash was Kobe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. So it'll be an interesting game on Wednesday. It'll be an interesting road trip for the Lakers, made even more interesting now that Talen Horton-Tucker, at least for starters, is in the health and safety protocols. See what happens when the plane lands. But Nick Angstadt, host of Locked On Mavericks, the Locked On NBA podcasts on the network. Thanks so much for coming on, man. This is fun. We'll do it again.
Absolutely, gentlemen.